Microsoft just added another AI feature to Windows, and once again, it's creating controversy. Some users say it's useful, while others think it's another unnecessary feature collecting data in the background. So what exactly does it do, and should you keep it enabled? Let's find out. This time there are actually two features worth talking about, not one, and together they paint a picture of exactly where Microsoft is taking its AI strategy in 2026, and why so many people feel like the operating system they use every day is slowly turning into something they did not agree to. The first is a Teams feature that went live on June 30th, 2026, buried at the bottom of a monthly update blog post that led with splashy announcements about AI calling agents and meeting security improvements. The second is Windows Recall, which has been around for a while now, but which security researcher exposed to new vulnerabilities in April 2026, reigniting a debate that Microsoft had spent over a year trying to close. Both of these features follow the exact same pattern that has defined Microsoft's AI rollout for the last 2 years. Announced quietly, defended aggressively, modified under pressure, and then expanded again when the news cycle moves on. Start with the Teams feature because it is the most recent and, in some ways, the more immediately relevant for the average person who uses a work computer. On June 30th, 2026, Microsoft pushed an update to Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Places that included a feature officially called Workplace. Check in via Wi-Fi. The way it works is simple. When your work laptop connects to your company's Wi-Fi network, Teams automatically detects that you are physically at the office and updates your present status across Microsoft 365 applications, including Teams itself, Outlook, and the Microsoft 365 directory that your colleagues and managers can see. When you disconnect from the corporate network, your status flips back to remote. No button to press, no manual update required. Just a passive automatic signal running in the background, converting your Wi-Fi connection into what some people have already started calling a digital time clock. Microsoft's framing of this feature is worth reading carefully because it reveals how the company thinks about the gap between what it is building and how people will receive it. The official description calls it an extension of existing check-in functionality, offering greater flexibility and user-friendliness to facilitate coordination with colleagues. The product manager responsible for Microsoft Places described it as a signal generated only when a device connects to configured corporate office networks through the Teams client, and stated clearly that it does not extend beyond those environments. Microsoft also points out that the feature is technically disabled by default at the tenant level, and that employees can opt out if their organization enables it. On paper, this is a thoughtful, consent-oriented rollout with appropriate controls built in. The problem is that the paper description and the workplace reality are two different things, and Microsoft knows this. The opt-out that Microsoft highlights is a technical opt-out. It exists inside the Teams settings menu. But the decision to enable the feature in the first place belongs to your employer, not to you. An IT administrator can enable workplace check-in across the entire organization, and every employee's device becomes a presence detection node at that point. Yes, you can technically decline to share your location through the Teams interface, but consider what declining looks like in practice. If your organization has enabled this feature, and your entire team is appearing as in office when they connect to corporate Wi-Fi, and you specifically are appearing as remote, despite being physically at your desk because you opted out, that is not a neutral and visible choice. It is a visible statement. Managers can see who is sharing and who is not. In organizations where return to office attendance is already a politically sensitive topic, opting out of a system your employer deliberately enabled is not the same thing as having privacy. It is just a different kind of visibility. This is not a hypothetical concern that privacy advocates invented. Labor groups in multiple countries flagged it immediately when the feature went live. The German Works Council framework, which gives employee representatives formal consultation rights over workplace technology, was cited by German labor organizations as grounds for requiring employer negotiation before the feature could be enabled. Privacy advocates in the UK pointed out that UK GDPR requires organizations to conduct a data protection impact assessment before implementing technologies that systematically monitor employee location, and questioned whether most companies enabling the feature would actually do so. In the European Union, GDPR-compliant configurations require explicit user consent before any automatic check-in occurs, which means European employees get a legally different version of this feature than employees in countries with weaker data protection frameworks. The technical details also reveal more than Microsoft's public messaging suggests. Workplace check-in does not just update your status in Teams. Because it integrates with Microsoft Places, the workplace coordination platform that Microsoft has been building out since 2024, it feeds into a broader system that tracks office occupancy by floor and by building, recommends which days to come in based on when your teammates will be present, and populates real-time data into heat maps of office, utilization that facilities and HR teams can access. Your individual presence signal, which Microsoft describes as a simple binary of in-office or remote, feeds into an aggregated organizational intelligence system that can reconstruct patterns over time. How often you come in, which days you tend to be present, whether your attendance correlates with what you told your manager. Microsoft says this aggregated data is governed by strict administrative roles and audit logging. That is a control structure, not a prohibition. The data exists. Someone in your organization with sufficient permissions can access it. The feature was buried in the June 30th blog post, mentioned in a single paragraph under a Places in Hybrid Work subheading, with no discussion of the privacy implications in the official communication. The AI calling agents got 3 paragraphs. The hardware, watermark option for meeting security, got a detailed explanation. Workplace check-in, a feature that automatically logs employee physical presence and feeds it into an organizational surveillance platform, got 1 paragraph and no mention of the controversy that had been building around it for months. The roadmap entry that gave advance notice of the feature was added in May 2026 with language describing it as automatic location, detection for presence, the kind of description most readers scroll past. A second roadmap entry, added on June 28th, 2 days before the feature went live, quietly clarified that it uses device Wi-Fi to confirm on-site status, regardless of Teams client activity. By then, most organizations had no time to prepare change management processes before it started rolling out. Now set that feature alongside what has been happening with Windows Recall, because the pattern is identical, even though the products are different. Recall was announced in May 2024 as a flagship Copilot Plus PC feature. The original pitch was that it would function as a photographic memory for your PC, taking periodic screenshots of everything you do and indexing them into a searchable local database. You could ask it natural language questions about anything you had seen on your screen and it would find it. The idea was genuinely interesting. The implementation was not. Security researchers who got access to early preview builds found that the screenshot database was stored in unencrypted plain text on the hard drive, accessible to any malware that reached the system. Every password field you had typed into, every private conversation you had read, every bank balance that had appeared on your screen was sitting in an unencrypted file that any sufficiently motivated attacker could read. The backlash was immediate and severe. Microsoft delayed Recall's public release multiple times. The company redesigned the storage architecture to use local encryption, requiring Windows Hello biometric authentication to access. They added filtering that was supposed to exclude sensitive content categories, including banking websites and credit card fields. They changed the default from opt-out to opt-in, meaning users would have to actively enable Recall rather than having to find and disable it. They eventually shipped the revised version to Windows insiders in December 2024 and began broader rollout in April 2025. Microsoft publicly described the redesigned version as a showcase of responsible AI implementation and emphasized that the team had addressed the core security concerns raised in the original preview. In April 2026, cybersecurity researcher Alexander Hagena published findings showing that fundamental vulnerabilities persisted in the revised Recall implementation despite the year-long security overhaul. The specific concerns centered on the data, storage, and encryption mechanisms. While Microsoft's redesign had added meaningful protections compared to the original unencrypted version, Hagena identified attack vectors that could allow malicious actors to access the stored screenshot database under certain conditions. The details of exactly which attack vectors and under what conditions are documented in Hagena's published research, which Microsoft acknowledged receiving before he went public. The company issued a statement saying it was investigating the reported issues and would provide updates. The timing was, as multiple security publications noted, particularly damaging for a feature that Microsoft had specifically held up as evidence that it could implement AI with appropriate security rigor. The broader privacy argument around Recall goes beyond the specific encryption vulnerabilities, and it is one that Microsoft has never fully answered. A tool that continuously screenshots everything displayed on your screen is, definitionally, a tool that creates a continuously growing record of everything you have ever looked at, including things you would never intentionally store permanently. Your banking website, your private messages, your medical information, documents related to your work, conversations you have had, and apps that do not have end-to-end encryption. All of it captured periodically, indexed, and stored on your local drive. Microsoft's response is that everything stays on your device, processed locally, never sent to Microsoft servers. Local processing is a real and meaningful distinction. But the security community's response to that argument is that local storage of sensitive data is still sensitive data, and a local database containing a visual record of everything you have ever done on your computer is an extraordinarily valuable target for exactly the kinds of attackers that target home users and enterprise employees. The question is not whether Microsoft sends your data somewhere. The question is whether creating and maintaining that database in the first place is worth the security surface it creates, regardless of where it lives. Both of these features, Teams Workplace Check-in and Recall, share a structural characteristic that explains why they keep generating backlash even after Microsoft makes genuine modifications to address specific concerns. The features are built around the assumption that more data collection is inherently useful, and that the job of the product team is to manage how people feel about that collection, rather than to question whether the collection should happen in the first place. Workplace Check-in exists because Microsoft's product vision for Microsoft Places includes continuous ambient awareness of where employees are. The feature is useful for that vision. Whether employees find it useful or whether they consent in any meaningful sense to being tracked is a secondary consideration managed through opt-out controls rather than addressed through the fundamental design. Recall exists because the vision of a searchable memory of everything you have ever done on your computer is genuinely powerful from a product standpoint. The security and privacy concerns are real problems to be engineered around, rather than reasons to question whether building the product is the right decision. In February 2026, Windows Central reported on internal discussions at Microsoft where teams were actively reviewing high-profile AI features, including Copilot placements and the recall experience. Sources described genuine internal debate about whether the pace and scope of AI integration into Windows had moved too fast and too aggressively. Microsoft had already added Copilot buttons to Notepad, Paint, and File Explorer with limited functionality and almost no explanation of what they were doing or why. They were there. A Copilot key had been added to new keyboards that could not be remapped to anything else. The Start menu contained promoted apps that functioned as advertisements. The lock screen included Microsoft Spotlight images with embedded promotional content. Every surface in the operating system had become, as one detailed forum analysis put it, a place to recommend, remind, personalize, or upsell. The February reporting suggested that some people inside Microsoft recognized this had gone too far and were pushing for a more restrained approach. The May 2026 Microsoft Build Conference reflected some of that restraint at the messaging level. Microsoft shifted its Windows AI pitch away from the Copilot Plus PC brand and toward local AI agents and models that could run across CPUs, GPUs, and NPUs on a wider range of hardware. The change in framing was real. Whether it represents a change in direction or a change in communication strategy is harder to evaluate. The Teams Workplace Check-in feature shipped on June 30th, 5 weeks after build. The recall security concerns surfaced in April. Neither of those events suggests that Microsoft has fundamentally changed how it thinks about what kinds of data collection are appropriate to build into products that run on computers, people use for everything from banking to personal communication to managing their children's school accounts. The practical question for anyone watching this is what you should actually do. For recall, the answer depends on what kind of machine you have and how you use it. If you are on a Copilot Plus PC, open the Start menu, search for recall settings, and make an active decision rather than leaving the default in place. If you are the only user of a personal machine, use it only for general computing and find the use case of searching your history genuinely appealing. The opt-in design means you can evaluate it on your own terms. If your machine is used for work, touches. Sensitive client data is shared with family members, or if you use it for banking or medical accounts, the security surface that Recall creates is not worth the benefit for most people in most scenarios. Turn it off, and if you want to remove it, immediately when it appeared in their environment. Morgan Stanley's CIO survey recorded a 9-point drop in the number of respondents planning to increase Microsoft 365 spending due to Copilot features. Enterprise IT departments are not anti-AI. They are organizations with legal obligations, employee agreements, and governance frameworks that move at a different speed than Microsoft's product release cycle. When Microsoft adds features that require that governance work without giving organizations adequate time or information to do it, the result is not adoption of the new features. It is erosion of trust in the platform, which eventually shows up in procurement decisions and in the conversations that lead IT departments to evaluate whether alternatives to Microsoft's suite exist that create less institutional overhead to manage. For individual users who are not thinking about enterprise governance frameworks, but simply want to know whether they should be worried about their own data, the honest answer is that it depends on your specific situation in ways that matter. Workplace Check-in only affects you if you use Microsoft Teams through an employer who enables the feature. If you use Teams for personal communication or through an organization that has not configured Microsoft Places, it is not relevant to you right now. Recall affects you only if you have a Copilot Plus PC and have enabled the feature. If your machine does not meet the hardware requirements for recall, or if it is disabled in your settings, the specific security concerns do not apply. The reason to pay attention to both features, even if neither currently affects you, is the pattern they represent. Microsoft has added features that monitor your screen and your physical location to products that hundreds of millions of people use. Both were deployed in ways that made them harder to understand and harder to avoid than they should have been. Both generated significant pushback that resulted in modifications that were genuine but incomplete, and the pace of new feature additions means there will be more like these before the year ends. Understanding the pattern is more useful than evaluating any individual feature in isolation.